Okay, here we are inside of a template that I've created for sample creation. Prepare yourself, this is going to be pretty long-winded, but I love the idea of creating something that is yours that you can then use and reuse on project after project. And you know, I have these for sale because you can use these in anything that you want. But essentially, I just want to show you how I did all of this. There's a lot to it, and the process, you can do it any way that you want. I don't think that there's one right way to do any of this. A lot of folks will argue, hey, you know, be careful on your signal chain because you don't want to have these loud ass samples, because you're going to deliver samples to somebody to use and then they're going to be louder than the mix that they're using. And then some people will be like, well, go ahead and go through your chain because that's the reason people use samples. Again, I don't think there's any wrong or right way to do this, but I'm just going to show you how I've done this in the past. This is from a few years ago, but we're going to get into it, and it'll be fun. Inside of this template, I have created markers that denote the velocity. So I just arbitrarily decided 6 velocities. 6 is the loudest, then 5 is the next loudest. It gets quieter from there, so on and so forth. And what I decided to do, velocity 6, 5, and 4 are rim shots, and then 3 is just going to go to you know, single strokes in the middle of the snare, and then quieter and quieter, and those will kind of act as like ghost notes whenever they need to be triggered. So then inside of these velocities, I'm doing 5 samples each, and each of these will be the round robin files. So sample 6A is this first one, and then sample 6B, sample 6C, D, and E. So each time a velocity sample 6 is triggered, it's going to cycle through each of those round robins to create a more natural sounding snare drum sample. So what I have here then is snare top dynamic, snare bottom, overheads, a mono overhead, and then room mics. So this is kind of what the samples just sound like right out the gate in terms of recording. And I've got it at the slowest tempo so that way I can account for the fade and account for any sort of additional editing that I need to take care of. I also have just I've added in, just because it gets pretty monotonous just sitting there sampling your own drum.
Velocity 6.
That way I can kind of know, all right, where am I? And then it'll say
Velocity 5.
I don't know, it's silly, but it's just helpful in terms of organization. So I've done that. These first 5 are velocity 6, then velocity 5, and I'm trying to just keep note of everything. To go in a more scientific manner, after you've recorded everything, you could go ahead, figure out what those actual levels are, and then normalize them to these certain levels. So if this equals, I mean, I don't even know how to fake it because I don't really know it. So I'm just guessing. If this is like neg 6 lufs or something, then you would just normalize each one of these hits to neg 6. So that way it would all be the exact same. But I think in my eyes that almost defeats the purpose of the natural sounding round robin. So like obviously I'm sitting there and I'm making sure that each velocity is the same as I go down the line for each round robin, but everything is going to have its own just kind of natural tilt. So everything is just a little bit inconsistent, but that's kind of what I would want in a sample. Otherwise it's just going to get too robotic. So these are what these samples look like, and now that I've got them recorded, the next step is to start chopping all of these up. So now that we've got everything recorded, we've got to chop everything up to start creating each individual sample. Before I do that though, I've got these plugins printed here, or I've got these plugins on some of these tracks. So I want to go ahead and commit these plugins. So for example, the stereo rooms have this devil lock kind of harmonic thing on it, I guess a roll off, and then this compressor from Waves, which is a 2500 emulation. So to hear that on its own, it's cool. It's good sound. And because of that, because of these plugins, before I go to chop all of this stuff up, I want to commit these plugins. So now all of the tracks have their effects printed on them. And I'm gonna go ahead and print the snare bus as well, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So now we've got all of these files printed. You know this because of the .cm. So now the next kind of tedious part is to tab to transient all of these, and we're just gonna start stripping away some silence and just making sure that the length of all of these is correct. So I'm just gonna listen, and then wherever I hear the tail fade is where I'm gonna cut. I'm gonna just say right here at this beat 4. So I'm gonna tab to transient to all of these and then just start cutting. And it would help if the snare bus was a part of the group. Okay, so now that we've got everything printed here, the next step is to apply fades, because the last thing that you want are samples that don't have the correct fades on them. Then you're just gonna get clicks and pops and just annoying things. So the thing here is when we tab to transient this stuff, we're essentially tabbing to the start of said transient. So applying a fade at the very top without going through every single clip and just dragging it out a little bit further is kind of difficult. So the way to work around all of that is when you're creating your fades, the shortcut here in Pro Tools is Command F. You'll want to go to your, what do you call this, fade in shape, and just kind of stretch it out where it can be the like kind of sharpest fade it can be. And then I usually just make this as short as possible. So if it could be, you know, 0.1 of a millisecond, realistically the shortest it can be is 1 millisecond. But we're making up for it by just stretching it out as far as possible. We're not going to create any new crossfades. And then the ending fade, typically I use an S curve because to me that sounds a little bit more natural. But in samples, I want this to be the most even fade out as possible. And because of this, I'm going to go ahead and just make this ending length, I don't know, 5,000 milliseconds, because if it's too long, it'll just correct it and bring the fade all the way up to the transient. Because what I'm trying to do is the beginning fade be as deep as possible, and then the fade out shape be as long as possible and go all the way up to the beginning of the transient. So we're just gonna do a test right here. And I see that this is doing exactly what I want it to. So when I play this sample back, we're still getting the transient. It's not cutting off any of the beginning. So now I can go ahead and select all of these. Command F for that fade. We still have all of these same settings, and then we're gonna apply. Now that we've done all of this, we're going to commit again, and in this section, we're not gonna consolidate all the clips. But essentially what this is going to do is just commit the fades, and now we'll have all of these clips that are then faded and correctly cut. But before I do this, save as. And now we're going to commit. We're not going to consolidate. And here we go. So now all of these clips are faded, and as we listen to them, we should be able to hear that evidence. Beautiful. So there we've got our fades. Next step is we're going to get all of these clips relabeled, because the most important thing is when we go into the trigger editor where we're going to put all of the WAV files to create the TCI files, we need everything to be labeled appropriately, so that way our file management is as organized as it can be, so we don't make any missteps along the way. The downfall is this is very tedious. So I'll explain it for this first velocity, and then we'll go through the rest. All right, so for this snare top C5, that's a small diaphragm condenser, and that's what I'm going to rename it as. And all of these are velocity 6, but I also need these clips to be labeled in their respective round robin number, or letter in this case. So this clip is going to be snare top SDC velocity 6A, snare top SDC velocity 6B, and so on and so forth. And so in order to do this, you're going to select all of these clips, and then the shortcut for clip rename is Shift-Control-R, and then I'm going to go ahead and just clear the existing name so we can just start from scratch. The next is to add the prefix, and this is going to be SNR top SDC. And then I'm going to call this velocity 6. And I'm not going to put A or B or C or D, because I'm going to now go to numbering, and then I'm going to not separate it with anything. I'm going to use letters, and I'm going to do timeline order left to right. So this is essentially going to add at the end of this label A, B, C, D, E, etc. So now we've got snare top SDC velocity 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, 6E. And now we're going to do the same for the rest of these, but we're just going to go velocity by velocity and just change it from 6 to 5. Same thing from 5 to 4. From 4 to 3, and then 3 to 2, and now 2 to 1. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing, and this is going to be our dynamic. So I'm going to go ahead and click dynamic, relabel it to dynamic, and then go velocity 6 again. Velocity 5, velocity 4, velocity 3, velocity 2, and velocity 1. Now we're here at the snare bottom, so now there's not two mics for this, so it's just snare bottom, velocity 6. So now that we've got everything relabeled, we've got snare top, small diaphragm condenser, 6A to 6E, and then 5s. We've got the dynamic, the bottom, we've got the bus, we've got the overheads, the mono overhead, and then the rooms. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and export all of these to their own individual folders that then we will point the trigger editor to when we're making our TCI files. And remember, the TCI files are a combination of these WAV files that are then triggered by the plugin trigger, and we can make our own presets with these TCI files that consist of the different mixes, whether we want it like ultra roomy, or if we want just the snare tops, or just the overheads, or whatever the case may be. We're just for sake of time here, I'm just going to show you the one preset, which is just going to involve all of these, but this will help inform how you can make future presets. So let's export all of the snare top, small diaphragm condensers, and to do that in Pro Tools, you're going to do Shift-Command-K. These were recorded at, if I remember correctly, I think I was at 96K, and then my typical export settings are 4824, but Trigger is very particular about their settings. So we're going to choose 44.1 24-bit. We're going to choose our folder. I'm going to create a folder inside of this folder that I've already created these samples, so I'm just kind of duplicating here. So I'm going to get another folder called Solid Black Beauty, and this is going to be 44.1 24. Create, and then inside of this folder, this is going to be the snare top SDC. So now we can go ahead and verify all of these samples. Here is 44.1 24 that we just made, and I see velocity 1A all the way to 6E.